Now you are the host.
Okay, cool. Let me see if I can. Yeah, you're right. I don't have the option to like upgrade the meeting.
What?
I don't have the option to upgrade the meeting.
Oh. So 40 minutes it may get cut. Huh?
Yeah, I think so. Well, let's see. Let me know once we can get started.
Yes? Yeah,
Let me know once we can get started.
yeah. I've messaged Emmanuel is there actually, so let's wait.
Okay, cool.
In the last meeting, students used to scribble on the screen, so please take care on that. If the screen sharing but disable participant annotation will be easier for you.
Okay.
Because if they scribble, it may distract.
Okay, got it.
So sir is saying that he has informed. Can we start? Let them join.
Okay, cool. So, hi everyone. So, in this session, we'll be talking about how to get started with deep learning and computer vision. So, we'll basically be discussing on how you can get introduced to deep learning, which is a machine learning concept, and computer vision, and implement your own projects or maybe solve problems that you would like to solve. Yes, let's get started. Okay, deep learning. What is it and where does it come from? So it is an artificial intelligence function that imitates how a human brain works in processing the data and creating patterns on how to make a particular decision. So when you try to solve a problem, you are going to basically say, how do you take a decision while you're solving the problem, just like how your brain processes how to make a decision. And what is deep learning? It's basically a subset of machine learning. It uses hierarchical level of neural networks to carry out the processes of machine learning. And what does it do? It basically learns from the data. So one advantage of deep learning over machine learning is the data that you're going to give to a deep learning model can be unstructured and unlabeled. So it basically doesn't have to follow a specific set of rules, unlike machine learning, so that you have more freedom to work on this particular problem. Okay. And layer extraction. So what is layer extraction is nothing but when you're trying to solve a problem, you will have multiple layers to progressively extract higher level of features from the input that you're going to give. Okay. So how does it work? Would be like, it's basically a technique for classification of the information through neural networks. It is, like I said earlier, it is basically how a human brain works. So we implement neural networks, which has set of input units where you can feed the raw data in. So as you can see here, we have a label data. So we will be giving a label data in the input. And in the next set, we'll have neural networks. So it basically is also called as deep neural networks in deep learning terminology. And then we have something called hidden layers. So hidden layers are nothing but you have an input, and yeah, I will show you in the next slide. So it's basically like you have an input layer and you have an output layer. In between, you have something called hidden layers. So each of the hidden layer that you're going to add to your problem is basically a function that would help you reach your goal. So when you have an input, which is basically data, you implement certain functions in each of these hidden layers. And then in the end, you get your output based on the functions that you give. So that's a hidden layer. And then we'll see what a computer vision is. So computer vision is basically a scientific field that deals with how computers can understand digital images or maybe videos. So from an engineering perspective, it basically like helps computer automate the tasks that human vision basically does. So in a computer vision, it's you have to do acquisition. So acquisition is nothing but you collect the data. This data can be an image, it can be a video, it can be a series of images, whatever. So first we have something called acquisition, and then we have something called training. So once you have the data in, you will have to come up with a model, and then this particular model has to be trained based on whatever the data that you're feeding in. So once you have trained the model, then you have something called processing. It's basically like, how are you going to train this model? And what are you going to do once the model has given you the data that you need? So we try to automate this process. So that's processing step, and then understanding. So how does this model understand this particular data, and whatever the data that the model is giving you, how are you understanding or implementing the solution from the model into your problem to solve the particular problem. So that's how you can implement computer vision into solving your problems. And next thing that I'm going to talk about is something called OpenCV. It is basically a library. It was founded to advance the field of computer vision. It is a powerful and reliable infrastructure that you can use to implement a particular solution to the problem that you want to solve. And it has a wide array of algorithms already available for you to use. So you don't have to worry about solving the algorithm. Rather, you can worry about solving the problem. So it was originated in the year 1999 at Intel, and it is totally free, and it is mainly used for research purposes. And currently it is licensed under BSD. It supports Linux, Windows, and macOS. Okay, now let's talk about the functionalities that OpenCV offers you. So it offers more than 500 functionalities that you can use. So one of the functionalities is image processing. So when you have an image, you can either display the image, or if you want to create an image, you can create an image, and so on, so forth. And the next one is segmentation. So this is something that we will be talking about in the later stages of the session. And that is nothing but you can threshold the image to change the value of an image, just like you can convert the image from the color to black and white. So you can have like, or convert the image from just an image to a set of data that you can use to make the model understand the image. And then we have something called transforms. So it's basically like you can do image transformation. So this will be useful when the image is already skewed or which is not clearly visible. So you can do some perspective changes or warp the image or scale the image. Scale up, you can scale down. So all those functions are available in transform. And then we'll come to machine learning. If you already have prior knowledge in machine learning, you would know what is Bayes algorithm, what is k-nearest algorithm, what is SVM algorithm is. If not, that is fine too, because all these algorithms are already available for you to use. So you don't have to worry about solving these algorithms in your solution. And then we have geometric descriptors. So this is nothing but, let's say in a video, you want to measure like how far the object is, and where you can add the index, or how are you going to train the index. So these are something called geometric descriptors. So we also have this particular functionality in OpenCV. And you can also have object tracking. So if you want to track a motion of a car or a motion of a person in a particular video, you can do that as well. So this is already made available for you to use to implement in your solution. And then fitting. So fitting is nothing but, let's say you wanna, like remove particular parts of an image, or you wanna make the image like dull or blurred, you can do that as well. So you have some morphological transformation available in OpenCV too. And there's also something called camera calibration. So this is nothing but if you are working on a Raspberry Pi, or if you're working on your simple camera module, you can basically determine the distortion matrix and a camera matrix, and you can also reproject. I mean, you can also find the error of reprojection, and you can save those configuration into XML or YAML. So once you try using these particular video recognition projects, you can make use of this particular feature in OpenCV. So in overall, what I would like to say is, in computer vision field, the OpenCV basically stands out like a beacon, and it is easily the most powerful and most popular library with a plethora of functions that you as an enthusiast can use it. Next, when you have two images such as these, what do you see in these images? So we see that this particular image represents a particular information, but what would a computer see? So whatever you're seeing in these two images, you would like the computer to understand them too. So what are you doing to make the computer understand that these two images represents or have particular data in them? So that is nothing but computer vision. So as you can see, visual information is the most important type of information perceived, processed, and interpreted by human brain. So let's see some detection and enhancements that OpenCV makes available for you. First, deconvolution. OpenCV can help you to reduce the motion blur when the motion is known. Therefore, the real-world images with motion blur can be restored to identify the particular object. As you can see in these two images, you can see a billboard with a bit of motion blur on it. And you can also see a person driving a bike with motion blur on it. When you talk about real world problems, like when you take an image, motion blur is most important problem when you collect the data set. So no matter what data set that you have in an image, there are various chances that you might encounter with motion blurs. So how do you solve this problem of motion blur and get the data that you need from the image? So then you can use of this particular functionality called deconvolution. Please take a note of these two images and how they seem to you. And in the next slide, I can show you like how deconvolution helps you to like get a better clarity on these two images. As you can see here, in the previous image, for the first image, you were not able to analyze what even was there in the image. But now you can see that we have something called welcome in the billboard, and we also have fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. It is almost clear so that you understand what is on the billboard. And here you can also see this biker wearing a cap and driving in his cruiser bike. So in the previous images, this was not available for you to detect what is there in the image. But once you have implemented the deconvolution, you have more, the information available to you on your image. So this is something that you can use to detect, let's say you want to detect the number plate of a car that is like moving so fast, or you want to detect a person, like a face detection on a moving person. So then you can use this concept called deconvolution, which is available in OpenCV to solve your particular problem. So this is something that you should look further into if you want to solve some motion blur problems. Next, we have something called bounding boxes. So this overlapping bounding boxes that you see, it is a good sign that your object detection has worked properly and it is working as you need it to work. But the problem is there is something called multiple responses. As you can see here, there are multiple boxes that appears, which is nothing but it is detecting the same face multiple times. And you also have like a blur, which is also being detected by the system. So what do? You have to do something called non-maximum suppression. By this, you will eliminate this unneeded detections, and then you will only have the object that you have to detect in your response. So That is what this bounding boxes would do. So we have something called non-maximum suppression feature available in OpenCV that you can make use of to reduce this multiple responses when you try to solve object detection. So as soon as you want to do a face recognition or object detection in your problem, so this is something that you have to make use of so that it will be pretty easier for you to solve the problem. Next, so we will have a kind of a demonstration on how to detect Parkinson's disease with computer vision. And we also have something called spiral test and wave test. It's basically like an medical test that is being performed, and how you can make use of these two tests and implement your computer vision model to detect Parkinson's disease. Okay, so as soon as you start solving your problem, so this is your problem. Your problem is nothing but you have to detect Parkinson's disease through a computer vision model, and you will be provided with two tests, which is a spiral test and a wave test. So this is a problem that you're trying to solve. So before you even start solving the problem, you need something that is called a golden circle. You start with the why and state the purpose. So what are you trying to solve is your first problem. The Parkinson's disease is basically like a long-term degenerative disorder for the central nervous system. It will affect your motor system. So motor system is nothing but the movement of your limbs, hands and legs. So that you have to understand what you're trying to solve, and then you have to understand how you're trying to like solve this particular problem. So there were some studies that suggested that geometric shapes drawn by patients who is like who has an onset of this disease um, will have certain changes in those images that you can make use of and say that this particular person has Parkinson's disease or not. And why is this useful? Because patients with Parkinson's disease will have something called muscle tremors, and they will have a hard time drawing smooth shapes. So there is no need for the patient or for the doctor to have additional hardware or like big medical testing kits available to carry out this particular test. It is simple. And once you can implement this particular model, this whole process of detecting Parkinson's disease will be made pretty easier for the doctors to detect Parkinson's disease. So that is what you're trying to solve, and that is the real world problem. Okay, so this is a study made in 2017 by Zamathal, and he concluded that in order to detect Parkinson's, you can ask a patient to draw a spiral, as you can see here. You can ask the patient to connect the dots so that it forms a spiral. And you can track the speed of the pen movement and pressure and the overall image to detect if the person has Parkinson's disease or not. So this is a test conducted in 2017, and we are going to make use of this test. So before you even start solving a problem, the main thing that you need is data set. So without a data set, you cannot train a model. So you need a good data set. So I took this data set from Center for Innovation and Technology Assessment in Health. It's also called NIETS. So they published this data set in University of Uberlandia, Brazil. So they have provided an image of 204, and 102 images have spiral test and 102 images have wave test. So once you have this data, there is another thing that you'll have to do, which is nothing but you'll have to convert this data set into testing and training data set. So the testing data set will help you train the model. The training data set will help you train the model, and the testing data set will help you determine if your model is working properly or if it is giving you the accurate results or not. And if you want to make use of other data sets available, you can go to Google and search for Google dataset. So they have published about 25 million number of data sets, which is available for free. And you can make use of those data sets to solve the problem that you try to solve. Okay, so this is a sample data set that we have. So we have something called the spirals drawn by those patients, and we have something called the waves drawn by those patients as well. So from this data set, you can clearly see that these spirals, these 6 spirals that you can see, is drawn by a healthy person, because you don't see those tremors while the person is drawing the diagram. And here, if you see, when the person drew the diagram, it has tremors on it. You can like easily clarify that this particular image has tremors, and this particular person might have Parkinson's disease. And same thing goes for the wave as well. You have non-tremored waves here, and in this side we have waves with tremors. So before I proceed to the next step, I would like you to make a note that when you arrange images like this, it is called a montage, and we will be doing this montage in the next set of steps that I'm going to go over. And before I go to the next step, the last thing that I would like to tell you is, like, for this particular problem, I've used Python and OpenCV to train the model and automatically classify if the model has Parkinson's or not based on the drawings. Okay, the next important step that you will have to do to solve the problem that you're trying to solve is setting up your environment. So for this setup, I have OpenCV, I have scikit-image, I have NumPy, I have imutils, and I also have scikit-learn. So these are the packages that I've made use of to implement the methods or the functionalities that I need to solve the problem. So here I've also mentioned the commands that you need to install each of these packages. So you can make use of these commands to first install the packages, and then you can make use of these packages into your project. Okay, so first we'll talk about how to implement the detection script. So here I've listed down the imports that I've used to make use of further in the project. So here we will be classifying the images based on something called random forest classifier. So this is the algorithm that I used to solve this problem. So there are so many algorithms like this available for you to use for a specific problem. So you don't have to use the same algorithm. You can implement any other algorithm available to solve the same problem. And you can even tweak the particular algorithm to increase your accuracy of the results. So here I've also used something called label encoder. So it basically helps me label the data that I have. And then I've used something called montage. So if you can see here, I have used imutils. So imutils have a feature called build montages. So this will help me like show you an image, a set of images into a single image, so that I can see, okay, this particular image has Parkinson's or not. And then I've also made use of something called histogram of oriented gradients. So basically, when you take an image and when you load the image into the model is not going to read the image, because the image by itself will not be of any use for the model to understand what the data is available in this particular image. So if you have noted down the previous wave image that you can see, those images are basically like white background. I can show you one more time. So if you can see here, the background is white, and the pencil in which, or the pen in which they've drawn, is black. So what we are going to do is we are going to use histogram of oriented gradients to basically convert this white background into a black background, and then convert this black lines into white lines. And then this will be more helpful for the model to detect tremors in the diagram. So this HOG that I've made use of, yes. So histogram of oriented gradients is nothing but HOG that I've made use of, will help me detect the tremors in the image through the white lines that is available. So, and I've also used something called random indices and statistic calculations. So this statistical calculations, I'm using NumPy. So NumPy is a pretty powerful model. If you wanna solve machine learning problems or like a deep learning problems or computer vision problem, NumPy is a very important package. So please look over this NumPy package and what are the features available in NumPy package, so you can better use the package more. And then I've also used some command line arguments. So for that, I'm using something called argparse. And the CV2 that I'm using is nothing but the OpenCV. And I've also used OS package because I ran this project in um, Windows. So if you're running it in any other, if you're running it in Linux, you don't have to import this. But if you're running it in Windows, you might want to import this package as well. Okay. So there now we are gonna see something called quantification of the wave. So as you can see, when we get an image, so we will have to quantify the image so that all the images are of the same size and all the images have the same features to extract those features from the images. So as I talked to you about earlier, so I'm using HOG as a structural descriptor that will capture and quantify the changes in local gradient in input image. So this complicated sentence is nothing but I'm basically loading the image in black background and white line. And then based on the white line, I'm just detecting where is the tremor in the image or basically the shake in the image. And then I'm using that information and feeding that information into the model. And then I will also quantify how the direction. So yeah, this is what I mentioned. So I will also quantify the directions of both spirals and waves. So basically I'll get how much shake is available in the particular image. And then we have something called load and extract. So how are you gonna load the data and extract the features from the data? So this is also one of the important steps. So no matter what kind of data you have, it can be a CSV file, it can be a text file, it can be an image, it can be a video. You will have to load the data from your local system. And then the important step is like you'll have to extract features from the data. So what do you need from the data that you have? So that is nothing but features. So you extract those features and make use of those features. So what kind of a feature that you extract and how much you're making use of those features can determine your result like pretty much. So it will have a big impact on your give me 1 minute. Let me just upgrade. I'm not sure if it will help me. Sorry about that. If I don't upgrade this call is going to end. So let's better upgrade the meeting. I am not sure why it's not letting me upgrade. Anyways, let's see how it goes and if it's not letting us. Hello?
Yeah, no issues. Like the student, you can rejoin with the same link, so we'll get another 40 minutes. Will be fine.
Yeah, perfect. So we have like 5 more minutes and let's go over the next things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes. So we have defined a function to accept path to the dataset. So we will be passing in the path where the dataset is made available. And then we have something called, so we are making use of this image utils method to to initialize both the data and the labels that we need. And we also have a for loop that can loop over the image path and then get all the images. So what it basically means is we have multiple images available in the path. So we are going over each of these images and loading them into your data variable. So you can make use of this particular variable. And we are also appending the particular data with features and labels, and it is returned as a numpy array. So you take the images from the local, and then you're loading the data, and you're also loading the labels for the images, and then you're basically returning the data as numpy array. So that's what we are doing here. And if you need a bit more time, you can take a look at this code, how I've implemented this particular method, which is basically like load the data and split the data. So here I'm returning the numpy array with the data and the labels. Okay, so the next we are gonna parse a command line argument. So this is nothing but I will be passing two arguments in the command line, which is nothing but the data set. Where is the data set available in my local? And there is something called trials. How many times I want to run the trial so that I will get a pretty good metric from the model. We'll discuss about the metric later in the steps. And so it's basically like these are the two arguments that I'm going to pass, and I'm going to set it to default for 5. So it will run 5 trials by default. Okay, training preparation. So you have the data. You're going to split the data into training and testing set. So you're going to first take the training path, and then you're going to basically run the trial for, like, as you said, as we saw earlier, we're going to run it for 5 times. So you will have a good trained model, and you can extract the accuracy, specificity, and sensitivity from the model. So we'll talk about those metrics later in the session. So we are basically, splitting it, and then we are adding the label encoder. We are making use of the label encoder and basically like transforming the image into what we need. Yeah. So yes. Yeah. So next, what we are gonna do is like, yes, it's gone. Perfect. Yes. So we are gonna initialize our random forest classifier to basically train the model, and this is an algorithm, as I mentioned earlier. So I'm making use of this particular. I'm not sure who's uh, drawing on the screen. Please don't do that. Okay, so we have, yeah, I've used a random forest algorithm to solve this particular problem. You can make use of any other algorithms available. And I'm making predictions on the particular data. So this is basically like a prediction model. There are so many different types of model available. And this is called a prediction model because I'm taking the data and predicting a value from the data that I have available. So yeah, and I will also be getting metrics. So from this particular data, I will be getting metrics such as accuracy, sensitivity, and specificity. And then I will also update my trials dictionary so that I can keep a log on what I've done and how this particular trial ran in this particular model. So that's about it. And then I will be printing something called statistical information. So this is nothing but for each of the metric that I've calculated. In the previous slide, we saw we will be collecting the metric from the trial. And that is nothing but we are collecting accuracy, we are collecting sensitivity, and we are collecting specificity. I'll be going over like what each of this metric means and how we can make use of these particular metrics. So we will be grabbing the values from each of the trials, and then we will be using those values to basically calculate two things. One, we will be calculating mean, and then we will also be calculating something called standard deviation, which you should already be aware of how standard deviation works. And if you're not, I would strongly suggest you to look into what standard deviation is, because it will be of much use to you when you're trying to work on